Have you ever been in an online argument and thought, how can this person be saying this? Where did they get this information? This is just too wacky. What if I told you that the people you're arguing with online might not even be real? And that there are arguments taking place all over the internet at any given time that are not real either, that are taking place between people and bots, and even bots and bots. The internet has changed how we see the world, but I really do think it's also warping our reality and how we perceive it. By the end of this episode, I hope that you'll have a better understanding of what is happening on the internet, the manipulation that's taking place, and how to avoid it, to be more productive on the internet, and how to reclaim your reality and empower yourself. Because a lot of the times the reality that we're fed on the internet can make us feel very apathetic or very hopeless or very angry. But when we better understand it, we can kind of rise above it, we can overcome it, and we can feel empowered in our everyday life and actually contribute to the positive change we want to see. But I want to start by talking about this conspiracy theory, the dead internet theory. The dead internet theory is a conspiracy theory that asserts due to a coordinated and intentional effort, the internet now consists mainly of bot activity and automatically generated content manipulated by algorithmic curation to control the population and minimize organic human activity. Proponents of the theory believe these social bots were created intentionally to help manipulate algorithms and boost search results in order to manipulate consumers. The dead internet theory suggests that online discourse is no longer real and that everything is controlled by bots and AI. Everything we're experiencing and seeing is like an artificial creation, this manufactured reality that's not real. And I want to be clear that this is a conspiracy theory because it does go pretty extreme. And I think that it's also very exaggerated because obviously I'm real. As far as I know, you're real as far as you know, and we are on the internet and we're not bots as far as we know. But I think that this theory holds truth, and I think that it makes an important point about our existence on the internet, how we interact and navigate it, and how we're being swayed and manipulated all of the time. The internet isn't dead, it's just heavily manipulated, and that is a fact. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And bots are used to amplify political narratives, fuel outrage, shape public perception. Corporations and governments use algorithmic control to sway consumers or get people talking about specific issues. I don't think we should ignore online manipulation, but I also don't think that we need to fall into the extreme paranoia that nothing is real. I think we can find a very good balance somewhere between the two. I think we need to be asking some questions when we're navigating the internet and we're having these interactions. How much of what we interact with is organic, and how do we separate real discourse from manufactured engagement? We might not always have a perfect answer, and we might not be able to perfectly do this, but I think that we can, by being aware of it, navigate in a way that is smarter and avoids getting lost in the noise. We were kind of in the middle of a Christian nationalist deep dive on this channel before all hell broke loose, and I've kind of put that series on pause for now. But in it, we were talking about the Cold War and the tactics that were used to divide Americans. And I talked about how, America was like so fearful of this communist takeover, this major threat that was kind of looming over and going to destroy our society. But what was really destroying our society was the psychological warfare that was taking place within the United States, both by foreign governments, the USSR, and by our own government. Both of these parties were participating in psychological warfare because it was an ideological battle. They both had their own ideas about what was a better way to run a country, capitalism, communism, which one wins out. They were both trying to convince everyone else in the world to get on board. And so it becomes this psychological, ideological battle, not a hot war or, a violent war. The USSR used disinformation campaigns to divide Americans during the Cold War, and they infiltrated social movements to cause internal strife and make the US appear weak. And the US was afraid of this communist takeover. And so they started kind of waging psychological warfare on Americans and creating these culture wars that kept us distracted with one another and fighting one another and blaming communism as the problem, which really ended up being blaming godlessness as the problem, atheism. The strategy was very simple: turn everyone against one another so they stay fighting with one another. And the government wanted us doing this so that we could squash anyone who dared to think outside of the Christian American capitalist box. And the USSR was doing it to us to dismantle us from the inside because, they believed that their way of life was better, and they wanted to prove that to us. It's a lot more complicated than that, but I think very simply put, that's what it was. I found this document titled Communist Psychological Warfare in the Framework of the Cold War. It's on the CIA.gov website. It's 44 pages, and I became totally consumed that I read all 44 pages of it. And I just want to kind of read through a few snippets, some important bits that I pulled out of it. The main part of psychological warfare is propaganda. Propaganda is a powerful weapon in communism's battle. This Cold War, which deep down may be an ideological conflict, is mainly conducted as diplomatic, economic, and psychological war in which espionage is an essential component. And there's this text from 4th century BC India that is included, and it talks about how in hot war, violent war, you risk a lot. You risk losing crops. You risk losing people and soldiers. Houses burn down. There has to be a new way. There has to be a way to infiltrate without all of the damage. It says there are other means in order to conquer the country of your enemy without losing the riches of that country. The following is the acme of a skilled warfare. Have hand-picked men penetrate unnoticed into the country of your enemy. Furnish them with ample means so they will be able to buy the enemy's counselors. Let them sow distrust in the hearts of its friends and instigate hatred in the hearts of its enemies. Let them induce infidelity in the enemy's wives and foster jealousy among its sons. Promise freedom to its slaves and then have them instigate mutiny among the bodyguard of your enemy. Poison the wells from which the beasts of burden drink, and burn down the houses containing war material. Commit atrocities against your enemy's people in your enemy's name so the people will grumble and hate your enemy. The idea is to create internal conflict because that's the best way to get the people in that conflict fighting against one another and fighting against the enemy. Psychological warfare is mainly directed against the morale of the capitalist world. All kinds of people and groups will be played up against one another. Where there are no conflicts, they will be created, and where there are conflicts, they will be intensified. Tension will be created among classes, between peoples and governments, and among nations. It says in here, United States and the Soviet Union have organizations in the field of psychological warfare that are being directed by the authorities. So the CIA is admitting both sides were both engaging in this psychological warfare. I thought this was really interesting because it goes into talking about propaganda and how propaganda is used. Modern man who lives in an increasingly complicated world needs again and again new knowledge in order to understand the situation around him. Mostly, he has not the time, the opportunity, or the interest to familiarize himself thoroughly with events. The result is that he has little or very superficial knowledge about many matters, a knowledge which mostly comes to him by propaganda media. Life is inconceivable without propaganda. Man is being influenced by propaganda in many ways in many fields. Therefore, the importance of propaganda cannot be underestimated. But on the other hand, it is subjected to limitations which are determined by the circumstances of those to whom it is directed and by its physical nature. So basically, it's making an argument that propaganda isn't inherently bad or wrong, but it is made wrong by the circumstance, what the propaganda is trying to achieve. We are surrounded by propaganda all of the time. Even a phrase, even a simple word like peace could be propaganda because it is an attempt to convey a message about what we hope to accomplish. But a lot of times propaganda in the wrong hands with the wrong intent can really harm societies. And it's really important to understand that we need shortcut information so that more people can understand what's going on around them. People work, they have jobs, they have life events, they have illnesses and disabilities and school, all kinds of things that keep them from being able to know what's happening all around them in their politics and in their society. And so many of us are limited in our time and ability to absorb all of the information that we need in order to make informed decisions about our society and about our politics. And so propaganda is a way to kind of shortcut that information and to give people the necessary kind of foundations that they need to understand. Now, this document is heavily biased for American culture. Obviously, it's written by the CIA, but it provides a very neutral tone throughout, and there are two sides to every story. And so it actually does provide some insight into how those on the communist side feel about what America does and how it engages in psychological warfare. And I think it's really important to hear both sides. Which are the tasks of the American psychological warfare? It has to convince the people all over the world that allegedly the USA lives under the threat of Soviet aggression, that the USA is the most democratic country in the world, that the American way of life, just like Hitler's New Order, must become the general way of life on our planet. But this is only half the story. The main task lies in the general rousing of unrest and insecurity, the instigating of some peoples against others, the sowing of enmity and hate, and the facilitating of American designs to unleash a new world order. So how interesting that while Americans are saying there is this communist new world order and they're trying to take over the world and we need to protect ourselves, the communists are saying there is this American new world order and they're trying to spread it all over the world and we need to protect ourselves. It's an ideological battle, and both sides feel as though they have the right way, and they don't want everyone else to assume that the other one has the right way. And we know that Russia and other countries are still engaging in this psychological warfare. There has been extensive study and research and reports put out on it over the last decade. We know that there are troll farms and bot networks and fake accounts that push division and extremism online. In an article from NPR in 2017, it says Russians targeted U.S. racial divisions long before 2016 and Black Lives Matter. It says Russian and Soviet influence mongers have spent decades pressing as hard as they can on the most painful areas of the American body politic, from the days of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the current era of the Black Lives Matter movement. Facebook, Google, and Twitter, which have said they'll send their top lawyers to testify, have discovered they sold ads to agents of influence as part of the Russian attack on the 2016 election. We can't conclusively say these actions impacted the outcome of the election, but we can say that these ads caused harm and additional resentment to young people who unselfishly fight for justice and equality for African Americans and other marginalized communities. It says, but what makes the targeting of African Americans especially ugly is that they have also been subject to active measures by their own government. The FBI, under then-Director J. Edgar Hoover, ran a campaign to hound King in 1964, including with listening devices in his hotel and letters threatening to ruin him. Meanwhile, the KGB was eager to exploit King as an internal political insurgent against Washington, D.C. King was probably the only prominent American to be the target of active measures by both the FBI and the KGB. An article from BBC in 2019 said Russian trolls' chief target was Black U.S. voters in 2016. A Senate inquiry has concluded that a Russian fake news campaign targeted no single group more than African Americans. It says Russian operatives used social media to deter Black people from voting and planted subtly racist content to incite conflict between ethnicities. Thousands of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube accounts created by the St. Petersburg-based Internet Research Agency, IRA, were aimed at harming Hillary Clinton's campaign and supporting Donald Trump. More than 66% of Facebook adverts posted by the Russian troll farm contained a term related to race. African American community voters were discouraged from voting and from supporting Hillary Clinton. The Black Lives Matter Facebook page, created by Russian operatives, was meant to imitate the Black Lives Matter movement, which campaigned against racism. Russia's influence mongers mostly do not try to program the American political environment with their own pet topics. Instead, they simply observe what is trending among Americans and turn up the volume. Topics include immigration, gun control, the Second Amendment, Confederate flag, race relations, LGBTQ issues, the Women's March, and NFL national anthem debate. There's an entire Wikipedia page on Russian interference in the 2016 election, and I highly recommend, if you have not read it, to read it, and you can check all of the sources, the source links, and go read the original reports. But this is a great way to kind of break down the information so you really understand exactly what's happening. Many members of Trump's campaign members have linked or reposted material from these Russian troll accounts. And although this has been in the news and this is public information, a lot of people really don't realize how bad it's gotten and how much of our internet activity is manufactured, how much of our outrage is manufactured. And I probably wouldn't know about a lot of this if I had not been pulled into the world of online bots and trolls in December. In December, I received a coordinated cyber attack of sorts on my comments and in my email. It started as back-to-back comments that I'm not going to repeat. And then there were emails that were sent to me from an anonymous source that, threatened my life, threatened my dog's life, threatened extreme bodily harm against me. And they tried, but failed miserably to dox me, to find me and put my information on the internet. And they even made a video, a really disturbing, violent, threatening video about me that they put on YouTube, and it has been taken down, thankfully. And I'm not going to go into details. I'm going to keep a lot of it private because I know that they want me to share the details. It's kind of the point. But I am pretty convinced, I'm 99% convinced that their goal was to get me to engage in some sort of a culture war and to get me outraged, to get me making a video about it and to kind of stir up chaos and make people afraid. But like I said before, people tend to underestimate me, and they really tend to underestimate my mind and the fact that I am ADHD. And when I get hyper-focused on something, I don't do anything but that thing. And I learned so much about trolls and their communities and the things they do, the things they say, how they manufacture outrage. I found out that these are mainly children that are being influenced by adults through social media, online gaming communities, but I'm sure these adults are very much active in these kind of troll farms, these foreign groups that are actively trying to create chaos here in our world. And my key takeaways were that so much of the comments and the interactions happening on YouTube and everywhere else online are very much manufactured, very much created to make us angry and sad and hopeless and apathetic and to make us fight. I learned how to spot bots, and I don't always get it right, but I learned how to understand how these bots work, the things that they say. But on top of the bots, I realized that it's not just bots. It's real people, but they're trolls. And so when you consider the fact that a large chunk of the online interaction, it's bots, but then additionally, there are trolls that are intentionally trying to create chaos. They're real people, but they're not pushing real, genuine conversation. And then on top of that, you also have real people on the internet that are interacting, that are being influenced by the language and propaganda used by bots and trolls. So imagine, with all of that going on, how much of your interactions with other people on YouTube, Reddit, Facebook, wherever, how much of that is genuine and how much of it is bot activity, troll activity, and people that are influenced not by their own critical mind and their critical thought process, but by bot and troll activity. Many of the debates that we're seeing, all the fighting going on in the comments, is manufactured to make us fight. So we don't actually pay attention to the very real life problems that are all around us. And what's really unfortunate about that is that these real life problems, they're real. And the discussions we're having within these culture wars are real. Racial issues are real. Systemic oppression is real. Racism is a very big problem in our country. Discrimination against marginalized groups, discrimination against immigrants, discrimination against people in the LGBTQ plus community, against trans people. These are very real issues. And we're not being fed these issues by anyone because they exist. But what's happening is we have foreign campaigns that are designed to kind of amplify the problems and get us distracted in the fight so that we're not actually coming together to create real life solutions. And it's weird because both sides seem to understand that this is a problem. I see people on the right that are like, you're just falling for, the propaganda. They're just manipulating your mind and getting you to, to fight for these causes that aren't real. The people on the left say, to the right that you're just brainwashed by Russian propaganda and they've infiltrated your election. And both of those things are true because they're not just attacking one side or the other. It's both. They're attacking both sides. And that is why I think we've gotten to this point where there are such drastic extremes. And I have to say that I am not afraid of the right as far as in my comments and getting mad at me or making videos about me. I expect it. I'm used to it. It's just all I've ever known is to disappoint people in the right wing, including my own family. But I was scared for a very long time of the left because that's my audience. That's pretty much who I'm talking to. People on the right don't typically like what I have to say. People on the left do. And so I was very afraid of not being politically correct, not saying the right thing, not considering everything that I need to consider to be considerate for everyone, everywhere, at all times. And so I was very afraid of that for a long time. And I finally overcome my fear by learning about how this works. Because even in my last video, I noticed that there were a lot of people that kind of jumped on and they were very angry at me, calling me a moderate white woman who is setting us back 20 years, 50 years, whatever, because I am just trying to promote peace and unity and coddle the right. And really what I was trying to do was just explain how we got here, because when we understand how we got here, we can combat it. But just by promoting peace and unity and encouraging productive conversations, I had all of these people who are on the left and on this fighting for the same thing I'm fighting that are getting mad at me and arguing with me and trying to discourage me from continuing on in the way that I'm continuing on in the way that I feel is right and authentic to me. And at first I got caught up in it. And then I realized, wait a minute, bots, trolls, people intending to create chaos and division they don't just exist on the right. They're not just the people coming in and, saying, cry, baby liberal. There are also people on the left that are either trolls or bots or have been influenced by these trolls and bots and are going to such extremes, because what does this do? This creates apathy. It discourages those of us who are really trying to create positive change from continuing to do so, because we think, wow, well, the right is against us. The left is now against me. Nobody's on my side. This is hopeless. This is hopeless. But it's not hopeless, because a lot of this interaction is just manufactured. It's not even real. And now I'm really not bothered by or afraid of the extreme left, because I know a lot of the time it's influenced by things that aren't real, influenced by people who want to create chaos, not positive change. And learning all of this has really given me a lot of hope, because it makes me realize that the reality that I'm experiencing online, when I see all of these crazy comments and all these people that seem like they've lost their damn minds, it makes me realize that that's not reality. And that when I go out into the world, I don't have conversations like that. People don't say these things face to face that they do on the internet. I'm not saying it never happens. There are extremists, there are racists, there are fascists, there are all kinds of people on the extreme sides of the political spectrum, societal spectrum out there. I'm not dismissing that. but it's not as prevalent as we think it is. It's not as common as we think it is because we get on the internet and we spend so much time here consumed by what we're being fed. And so much of it is manufactured. So little of it actually reflects the real world outside of our computer. And so we assume that everything we're seeing in the comments and online is real. But then we walk out into the real world and we get a very different story. The internet is designed to trap us. Bezos, Musk, Zuckerberg, their platforms profit off of our engagement. And the more time we spend online, the more money they make because the more ads we see. As someone with ADHD, I know that scrolling is like this endless dopamine factory, basically. And that these feeds, these algorithms are designed to keep us scrolling, keep us going, keep us watching, keep us consumed. The more time we spend online, the less connected we are in real life, and the more the online world becomes our reality. But what happens when the online world is being manufactured and manipulated by people who are trying to control us and divide us? When we believe that the online world is the real world, we assume the worst of people based on toxic internet discourse, and how much of that toxic internet discourse comes from bots, trolls, and people influenced by bots and trolls. Outrage is the business model. If they can make you outraged, then they can make you stay on their platform. They can get you typing, they can get you talking, they can get you in the comments going back and forth. The more comments, the more views, the more ads, the more money that they get to make off of you, manipulating you for outrage. Think about how many times you've been scrolling on Facebook and you've seen one of those like crazy rage bait accounts where they are like claiming to make a cake, but they do it in the most obnoxious way possible. And by the end of it, it's this like big, pile of gush. But these accounts have like 1 million followers and thousands of comments. And everybody in the comments is just arguing with one another and mad. And they're like, this is ridiculous. This is so stupid. And that account exists because they know that the more people who engage with them, the more money they make. And while you guys are fighting in the comments about nothing that matters and wasting your time, the people who created that comment are laughing all the way to the bank. And so this has really trickled down from, foreign governments, our government, corporations, into just like everyday average people that want to make a quick buck. And so they get on the internet and they create rage bait. And I find that to be so sad that as a society, we have turned content creation from something that was supposed to be meant to express, to imagine, to spark creativity and innovation and connection and conversation. We've turned that into something that can be utilized just to profit off of outrage, profit off of psychological manipulation. And I don't really mean to be extreme when I say this, but I find it to be very abusive, very psychologically abusive of human nature to create content that has no meaning or purpose, but to profit off of people's negative feelings and outrage and their fears too. There was a study done in China on which emotion goes viral the fastest. It says joy moves faster than sadness or disgust, but nothing is speedier than rage. Anger is a high arousal emotion which drives people to take action. It makes you feel fired up, which makes you more likely to pass things on. And I think anger can be a really good thing. We just have to learn how to channel it into passion. But at the very end of the article, there's so much hope. And I think it's something that all of us need to focus on and remember and really like keep in our minds. The one emotion in this study that outpaced anger was awe. The feelings of wonder and excitement that come from encountering great beauty or knowledge, such as news report of an important discovery in the fight against cancer. Awe gets our hearts racing and our blood pumping. This increases our desire for emotional connection and drives us to share. I think we really need to spend more time being thoughtful in our online approach. And this is me too. I'm very reactionary. I'm very impulsive. And I used to be so much more reactionary and impulsive, very uncontrollably so. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed with ADHD and I went through treatment and I've learned how to be more curious about myself rather than shame myself and try to understand why I do the things that I do. It becomes a lot easier to kind of master those impulses, master the reactions, and overall just remain calm. In our conversations, maybe stop before we respond and type, which I have to stop myself from doing a lot. I can't tell you how often somebody comments and I'm like, wait, and I just have to like put my hands up, take a breath and say, is this what I really want to say? Erase, and sometimes I hit enter before I do that. That happens. Nobody's perfect, and I'm not encouraging you to be perfect. But I think that as we make it a practice, as we keep this in our mind and we move forward, it gets easier and easier. It becomes a habit. And so eventually you get to a point where you're online and you see a comment and your first thought isn't to rage at them. Your first thought is, why are they saying this? Could this be a bot? Is this a troll? Is this even real? Does this contribute to any kind of positive change in my life or anyone else's? When you see comments from people who have no profile picture, a generic username, no content on their channel, and all they're doing is posting something extreme or inflammatory or something that might make you feel apathetic, like, it's useless, no point. I'm trying to move forward with the attitude that that is most likely a bot, or it's influenced by a bot or a troll, and it's not worth my time. And so it allows me to navigate to the stuff that really matters, the people that are actually trying to have genuine conversations. So I'm not getting distracted by this entity that is trying to pull me away from what's really important. But allowing that filter to exist in your mind, I think, is really important when you're moving forward. And it allows you to kind of rise above the noise so that when you see all this chaos happening, instead of getting sucked into it and also allowing it to create despair or hopelessness or apathy within you, you can look at it for what it is, a game, and you're in a totally different level at this point. You're not playing the game anymore. You are rising above it, and you are staying focused on your mission and not getting pulled away by the noise. All of these people that come to my comments and they say every single person who voted for Trump is an ignorant, racist, bigoted fascist. Every single one of them. You can't talk to them. They're all ignorant and stupid. That is not helpful, and it's actually not true. And you're not showing me that you are a person who cares about critical thought or being reasonable when you say things like that. And what it shows me is that you are either a troll or a bot trying to create division or apathy, or you are someone who doesn't get out a lot and you don't spend a lot of time having real life conversations. And so you assume that your internet bubble is real life. And yes, you might have racists in your life. Yes, I know plenty of people in my life from my past that are very hateful people, that are racist. I'm not saying they don't exist, but they really do exist in their little factions, and they're usually not talking about it online. I think what we're seeing online is just this kind of manufactured, almost like persona or satire of the real world. I don't think we need to just get off the internet. I think we need to find balance. We need to unfollow rage bait accounts. We need to follow more artists and free thinkers and people who are promoting peace and unity and compassion and empathy and critical thought. People talking about science and history and things that inspire awe, things that make us want to live and find purpose and meaning, not things that make us fight and make us outraged. And we're going to be upset. We're going to be angry. We're going to be outraged because a lot is happening around us, and it's very scary, and it's threatening a lot of lives, and a lot of people are and will suffer. And that is a really unfortunate thing. But we help them by finding the smartest, most productive ways to create positive change, not by getting in these manufactured fights, not by letting our bullies win, by getting caught up in the game they want us playing. I don't want to play the game anymore. You probably don't want to play the game anymore. You might be watching this just out of curiosity and might have voted for Trump and fully support him. And if that's you, we are both being caught up in the same game, victimized by the same thing. And if you and I were to get off the internet, sit down, look at the facts, have a real conversation, talk about our values, what we want, what we hope for, we probably would agree on a lot more than we would disagree. And we'd realize that all these silly fights that we're having are dividing us when really we probably could find easy, simple solutions for our problems and our differences. And we could probably find ways to enact policies and government that allow us to move forward, that honors both of our values and both of our dreams and hopes and goals without all of the noise. But if we're still caught up in all of this noise and the culture wars, we'll never actually get somewhere. So I think what the left has to do is realize that it is just as easy for them to be manipulated by psychological warfare and get them to kind of dig their heels into extremist ideologies or just in arguments that really don't matter, that don't get us anywhere, just as much as the right. And the right really needs to understand that just because the left has been lied to and manipulated and swayed in one way or the other doesn't mean that there aren't real problems the left is trying to address, but that the fights are being amplified to highlight unnecessary parts of the fights so that we don't actually find real solutions to the problems. People don't like that I promote unity. People are like, I'm not reaching across the fence. I'm sick of these people. I'm done. And that's your right. I'm not telling you what to do. Everybody has their place. But if it's true that the goal of the people who are trying to oppress us and are trying to keep us divided, if it's their goal to keep us fighting, if it's their goal to have us engaging in this outrage and in this apathy, then I would think if you want to change it, then you would have to no longer give in to the outrage and the culture wars, right? Like that would be the smartest way to approach it. When they want me to be angry, I channel that anger into passion. When they want me to hate, I learn how to understand and be empathetic and be compassionate to the experience of another person that I might not agree with. Love, empathy, compassion. People think that we use these words as a way to make ourselves look good. But in reality, I truly believe that those are qualities that can overcome anything, including hate. And so if you want to overcome hate and division and you want to move forward and you want to find positive change and you don't want to have this split country of people that are just fighting one another, then I would think the best way to approach it is to overcome the hate and to love when they don't want you to love, to unite when they want you to divide, to offer empathy and compassion when they want you to shame and guilt and point your fingers and call names. They want you to do that. And so what I'm realizing now is I want to do the opposite of what they want me to do. And sometimes that's going to piss off my viewers. Sometimes people are going to say that I'm doing it the wrong way. I'm not being aggressive enough. I'm not fighting enough. And that's exactly what those who are oppressing us, exactly what we're fighting against, that's what they want us to do. So I'm going to do the opposite. It's about being smart. It's about not doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And it's about being able to do the hard work that you don't want to do, to put down your pride and to stop trying to be the bigger person, be the better person, be the smarter person, the most righteous person, the person with the better moral values, and just be a person that wants to see things change and wants to see a world where we're not always fighting and we're just coexisting at the least. We don't have to love each other. We don't have to hold hands and be best friends if we are on opposite sides of the spectrum. We don't even have to interact if we don't want to. I just want us to be able to coexist. I just want to be able to exist over here. You exist over here. And we do our thing. If we just got off the internet and stopped engaging in all this stuff they want us to engage in, that we could probably do that very easily. I really do believe that. We need to be supporting media literacy. We need to teach people how to spot disinformation, how to spot bots, how to spot people who've been influenced by trolls and bots, learn to ignore them and favor genuine conversation, favor art, favor science, favor knowledge, and awe, wonder. And so I just want to encourage you to get out there and to experience the real world and find good balance and consider nuance and not be so reactionary, not be so impulsive. These are all things I'm saying to myself as I'm saying them to you. I think we have all been made victims by the system, all of us. And I know a lot of people don't agree. They didn't like that I said conservatives were tricked. Leftists were tricked too. We've all been tricked and we've all become victims of the system. And there's no perfect way out of it. We can't completely avoid it. We're here, but being aware of it and actively engaged in promoting positive change and not falling into all the noise, that will help us slowly overcome this and rise above it and do something different. We need to do something different. Like we really, really do. And I'm trying to promote that here. And we all have our place in the resistance. We all have our place against systems of oppression. And I truly do believe that it is not red versus blue. This has become a kind of class struggle. But I at least wish that we could learn how to communicate better, have more productive conversations, and understand that at the end of the day, if we were to have these conversations face to face without all the noise and with the nuance and with sharing our hearts and looking in each other's eyes, at the end of it, I think we would actually we would get somewhere productive. I really do believe that. And that the worst of each side is not the rule or the representative of the entire side. If you walk away from one thing in this episode, just remember that the people who profit off of division want you to believe that people on your side are the enemy, and that people, your fellow Americans on the other side, are also your enemy. They want you to make an enemy out of other Americans rather than making an enemy out of them. But the real enemy is not your neighbor. The real enemy is the machine that is trapping us all in here and keeping us divided. So I think we need to find a way to break out of that machine, to rise above it, to ignore the bullies, ignore the trolls, ignore the bots, and try to focus our energy on real life productive conversations. And we can have those online, we can, but we can spend more time having those productive conversations if we're ignoring all the noise and we're not getting trapped into the traps that they set for us all of the time. I thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. And thank you all for your support. There's over 10,000 new subscribers here in the last month, and that is really amazing. So I think that I have a message that really resonates with a lot of people on all sides of the political spectrum. And I've noticed that there are people from the right that are actually listening to me more than people on the left, which is hilarious because I'm not really sharing any conservative values. I'm not siding with conservative policy. And in fact, I don't really share my own idealistic political goals or wants, desires, because I understand the difference between having a personal idea of what an ideal system might look like and what is actually attainable and what honors the systems that other people want. And I think maybe all of us need to kind of try to find a balance in our mind that you might have this radical idea of how a society should be run and how a government should be run. But if your fellow Americans have different ideas about how things should go, then maybe we should try to find a compromise so that one doesn't dominate the other. It's a really hard balance, but I think it's important. And we need to be having more conversations about how we can come together rather than fight. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all of my members and all of my new members that are here. You guys are awesome for supporting me. And for those who have been donating on the website, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for your super thanks and your donations, because that has given me the time to step away from my other job so that I can actually focus my time and energy here and share a message that I think is really important, that will promote peace and unity and actually hopefully spark productive conversations and real positive change and unite us for once. I know that's probably a very ambitious hope and goal, but I would rather be ambitious than apathetic. So I'm going to keep being ambitious and I'm going to keep talking. And thank you so much for everyone who has stuck it out with me and continues to.